They say the coldest nights expose the warmest hearts, but no one expected the ruthless, untouchable CEO, Arav Hale, to stop his car for a stranger. Not until he saw a young nurse, drenched in rain, clutching a crying baby at an empty bus stop. What he didn't know was that taking her home would change his entire life, and break open wounds he'd buried for years. Stay with me till the end, because what begins as an act of kindness turns into a story of healing, sacrifice, and a love that neither of them saw coming. Open Book Chapter 1, The Night the Cold Broke Him. Arav Hale was not known for slowing down, let alone stopping. His employees whispered that he had ice instead of blood, his board feared his decisions, and the world praised him as the youngest billionaire CEO to rise from nothing. But none of them knew the truth. Arav lived fast because silence terrified him. Silence reminded him of the night he lost everything. Rain hammered the city like 1,000 needles as he drove home from a late board meeting. The road was almost empty, the night unusually dark. He loosened his tie, exhausted, replaying the arguments from earlier, partners threatening to pull out, investors demanding results, and his assistant insisting he needed rest. Rest, a meaningless word to a man who had forgotten how to breathe properly. As the wipers swept across the windshield, something made him slow down, a figure at a bus stop. At first it looked like just another stranded commuter, but then he saw her hands trembling around a bundled blanket. A baby. And she looked half frozen herself. His car rolled to a stop before he even had time to think. The young woman glanced up, startled by the headlights. Rain clung to her nursing scrubs, and her hair, dark, soaked, plastered to her cheeks, framed eyes full of exhaustion and fear. The baby in her arms whimpered, its little chest rising and falling rapidly. Arav stepped out, his umbrella hardly shielding him. "You'll get sick out here," he said, surprising even himself with the softness in his voice. She tightened her grip on the child. "The buses stopped running, I didn't know where else to go." Her voice cracked, and for a split second it pierced straight through the walls he'd spent years building. "Come with me," he said without hesitation. "Both of you." She froze. I don't know you." "True," he nodded. "But the storm isn't giving you a choice, and honestly, neither am I." Something in his tone, firm, but strangely protective, made her swallow her fear. She finally nodded. Arav opened the back door, carefully helping her in. The baby coughed, its tiny body trembling. "What's his name?" he asked. "Her name is Alina," the woman whispered. "I'm Maya." As he drove, he glanced at them in the mirror. Maya was rubbing the baby's back with the gentlest touch, but he noticed her hands were scraped, maybe from work or rushing earlier. Her exhaustion was plain, but beneath it, something else lived, strength. When they reached his mansion, she gasped. "No, please, this is too much. I just needed shelter for the night. I can't stay here," she said, hugging Alina tighter. But the baby's coughing deepened, and tears brimmed in her eyes. Arav stepped closer. "You're staying. I have a guest room. And a doctor on call. Let me help." For the first time that night, Maya truly looked at him, really looked, and saw a man who seemed lonelier than she was. Inside, while the baby was being treated, Maya stood in the hallway, shaking. Arav placed a warm blanket around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he murmured. Something inside her broke, not out of fear, but relief. Tears streamed silently down her face. Arav didn't touch her. He simply stood there, present, steady. For a man who never let anyone close. He realized he didn't want her to leave. That night, as the storm raged outside, three strangers, one shattered CEO, one broken nurse, and a fragile little girl, unintentionally stepped into each other's lives. And none of them would ever be the same again. Open Book Chapter 2, A Home He Didn't Know He Needed. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains as Maya opened her eyes in the guest room. For a moment, she thought it was all a dream, the warmth, the quiet, the feeling of safety she hadn't felt in months. But then she saw Alina sleeping peacefully beside her, no longer coughing, her tiny fingers curled around Maya's hand. Maya exhaled shakily. Thank God. She walked outside and found the house glowing with morning calm. What stunned her most was the smell: coffee, warm bread, something comforting. When she reached the kitchen, she froze. Arav Hale, the billionaire who the world believed didn't even know how to boil water, was standing there wearing a plain black t-shirt, awkwardly scrambling eggs while reading a YouTube recipe on his phone. "You cook?" Maya asked softly. He nearly dropped the spatula. "I'm learning." He cleared his throat. "Can't let a mother and child go hungry in my house." Her lips parted, surprised, touched, confused. "No one has done something this kind for me in a long time," she admitted. Arav didn't ask why, but he sensed pain behind her words, the kind he knew too well. Over breakfast, she told him her story. She'd been a nurse for 4 years. Her husband had abandoned her the moment she became pregnant, leaving her with bills, exhaustion, and a newborn she was determined to raise alone. She worked double shifts, slept irregularly, barely had time to breathe, and last night the bus system shutting down had been the final blow. Arav listened, really listened. Not with the detached politeness he used in boardrooms, but with a quiet ache in his eyes. When she finished, she wiped her tears. "I'm sorry for burdening you. I'll leave today." "You're not going anywhere," Arav said firmly. The words hung in the air, heavy, intense. "You need stability. Alina needs care. And," he exhaled slowly, "I haven't had anyone in this house for a long time." "Why?" she whispered. For the first time, Arav let down his guard. "Because this house is full of ghosts," he said. "I lost my mother when I was young. And the only person who showed me love, I wasn't able to save her." He looked away, jaw tightening. "Since then, I kept people out. It was easier that way." Maya stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You didn't keep me out." Arav's eyes lifted to hers. "No, I don't want to." From that day forward, a gentle routine formed. Arav kept his distance at first, emotionally, but he always noticed Maya. He saw how she soothed Alina with lullabies that sounded like home. He saw how she organized the kitchen without being asked, how she smiled even when exhausted, how she carried herself with grace despite everything life had taken from her. And Maya noticed him too. She noticed how he flinched at loud noises, how he worked late to avoid sitting alone, how he sometimes stood outside Alina's door just to hear her tiny breaths. Something silent, fragile, and beautiful grew between them. Weeks passed, and they became each other's anchor, two broken souls holding each other steady. One evening, as they sat on the balcony, Maya whispered, "Why did you stop your car that night?" Arav stared at the city lights, then at her. "Because you looked the way I felt." Her breath caught in her chest. "And because," he continued softly, "some part of me knew that helping you might finally save me." A single tear slid down Maya's cheek, not from sadness but from healing. Arav gently wiped it with his thumb. "Maya," he said, voice low, "come with me, not just that night. Stay. Let me be part of your life." Her heart trembled. "And Alina," she whispered. He smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in years. "She already owns half my heart." Maya broke down, not in pain, but in relief, in hope, in the quiet realization that she had finally found a place where she didn't have to survive alone. And for Arav, the lonely CEO who had built walls higher than skyscrapers, he finally found a home. Not in the mansion, not in success, but in the girl he saved. And the little baby who unknowingly saved him back.